Hello, and welcome to R&R's Real Stories in Restoration. This subseries of our Ask the Expert podcast shares the stories of the people in restoration and remediation from all corners and levels of the industry. I'm your host, Valerie King, R&R's editor-in-chief, and I'm joined today by Benjamin Surdi, who is founder and CEO of PureDry Restoration, which provides restoration services throughout Northwest Washington State. And he's also founder of Pure Clean Carpet Cleaning, which specializes in oriental rug, carpet, tile, upholstery, hardwood, and air duct cleaning. Now, since Benjamin started PureDry Restoration in 2016, it has more than quadrupled in size and revenue. And over the past 3 years, PureDry Restoration has grown 181%. The business placed on the Inc. 5000 for 5 consecutive years and has been recognized as one of Washington State's fastest rising companies for 5 years. So, you may have guessed that today we invited Benjamin on to talk about what goes into such impressive growth. So, thanks so much for joining me, Benjamin.
Thanks for having me on the show, Valerie. And I'm excited to chat with everybody, and hopefully some people can learn a couple things, and look forward to it.
Sounds like a plan. So, let's start with what Pure Dry Restoration does. What services do you offer to Northwest Washington, and who are your target customers?
Yeah, so I figured I'll start with Pure Clean and then kind of lead into Pure Dry. So basically, at Pure Clean, we built a service experience to cater to the high end marketplace. We're in Seattle, Washington. There's a high disposable income amount in a lot of different areas. So when we went into the carpet cleaning side of things, we didn't want to be just a commoditized, traditional carpet cleaning company. We identified the different pain points that were specific to the experience that demographic was looking for, and that would allow us largely to charge a premium price for what we do. Because I think the biggest thing for me was that I wanted to make very successful people. I wanted to create a company where people could really afford to accomplish their dream and their vision and the lifestyle that they wanted. So I wanted to build a premium service. And so what we do is we do carpet cleaning and upholstery and tile and grout and HVAC cleaning. We do anything in the indoor environment, both residentially and commercially. And so with PureDry, we did a very similar approach to identifying the biggest pain points that were experienced by consumers. When I decided to get into it, I did a lot of research. We talked to different plumbing companies. We talked to insurance agents. We talked to previous Pure Clean customers who had gone through water damage. We're like, tell me about it. Like, what was the worst part about it? What would you change if you could change something? What would a perfect experience look like? So once we conducted all the research, we developed a lot of our customer service systems and the sales system, the materials, all around that focus point. So we launched PureDry in 2016 and just really focused on providing a wow experience and a raving fan. A lot of the listeners have probably read the book Raving Fan. But I believe that there's a big difference between being a satisfied customer and then being a true raving fan, where they talk about it to their friend at dinner and they want to share the experience. So with PureDry, we currently do water and mold and fire. We have a boutique construction department, which just means that we don't want to do all and every job. We believe we cater to a very specific boutique environment. We know what we're good at, and we stay within those confines. And then in 2022, we'll be adding contents. So
Nice. Cool. Very good. Okay, give us an idea of how big your team is, your fleet is, locations.
yeah, we're really not that big in the context of how many people we have at the company. We have 49 people at the company. We have 37 trucks in our fleet. We operate at one primary location, which has been challenging, quite frankly, to run two different companies out of the same building. And anyways, it's been a challenging thing. But we run out of one primary location, which is in Snohomish, Washington. We plan on adding 3 more locations by 2025. So we're kind of lacing in all the thread to start expansion into these other markets that we think have similar demographics, similar population, similar opportunities for us. So
Very good to know. Okay, that layers in the Pure Clean carpet cleaning lens, which I was curious how that works with, the two companies you talked about. So you're working out of the same location. Can you tell me more about what that's like? They are technically two separate entities, or is there crossover in terms of what your staff are focusing on?
no, it's interesting. I feel like when you're dealing with carpet cleaning or oriental rug cleaning, they want to know that they're hiring a true expert in the field. Like if you were going to hire a cosmetic dentist, you wouldn't want that person to be the jack of all things. And so when we created the Pure Clean brand, I'm like, it doesn't flow into water damage quite the same. And I didn't love the idea that a carpet cleaner is now all of a sudden this you know, drying specialist. I think they're very two different things, really. So when I made the decision in 2016, I knew that I wanted to create a separate brand that really had its own unique look and feel, which of course, required another website, different business cards and uniforms and systems and procedures and handbooks. And so they're run as two different companies in the context of all those things, but they're the same entity, the same tax ID. Bookkeeping's interesting. I have to have a pretty high handle on the way that we run our books to have clean profit margins and benchmarks for each of our expenses within each profit center that we have, because we have more than PureDry and Pure Clean. We have our construction department, which is also a different profit center. So we have to have clean financials there. And then we also have Pure Odor Systems, which is another profit center. Again, another company that looks like a different company that's run in the same building. So
Thanks
I
for
like,
sharing that.
to keep it interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for diving into the profit center component of that and how you very strategically thought about the branding so that you're reaching people with a more specialized approach depending on what their needs are, trying to draw those lines. Very cool. Okay, so before today, what was the case prior to these entities we just talked about? What led you to where you are today? If you could share a little bit about that story.
Well, just long story short, I think that um, I grew up in Woodinville, Washington. I had 5 kids in my family. So, the long story short of it is, I'm not going to make it a long story, is that I got in a lot of trouble when I was a teenager. Um, and I mean, a lot of trouble. I got into a lot of mischief and legal issues and DUIs and all this stuff that really made my life a lot more challenging than it could have been. I didn't graduate high school. I got my GED when I was 17. Um, but the thing that was unique about me is that I grew up in a family where my dad was a window washer, so he was a self-employed, self-made individual. And so obviously, because I got in trouble in school, right? Everything has a reason. Everything has a benefit when you look back. So when I got in trouble in school, obviously my parents wouldn't just let me sit on the couch and twiddle my thumbs when I was suspended and stuff. So I had to go out and work with my dad. So I got exposed at a very young age to understand like what business was, what customer service was, what sales looked like, what all these different things that were important look like. So obviously, getting into my adulthood, it gave me I think, an advantage over a lot of people, because I was very comfortable talking to people. I was very comfortable with sales and understanding what it meant to put food on the table and stuff like that. But so that's that. I went through a lot of crazy stuff before starting Pure Clean carpet cleaning, but um, I just had a chip on my shoulder. Because I got told that I was a troublemaker and I wouldn't amount to anything, and kids weren't allowed to hang out with me because their parents thought I was too reckless, and you develop kind of a a chip on your shoulder where you get really sick and tired of people telling you that you're a certain way, and you almost start to believe it in some cases, right? Like it starts to become who you are. What people tell you are, you start to believe at some point. But I think I just hit like a thing where I physically got emotionally distressed on what people believed me to be, because inside my heart I knew that that wasn't who I really was. So I went on a mission to prove everybody wrong, and I had this burning, like, insane obsession to become the most successful person that anybody in my entire sphere of influence had ever seen. And I got really driven by that. And I think everybody has to be driven by something. You know, we'll get into this, but to really win, business is a sport. And I say that all the time. Business is a sport, and you don't play a sport to lose, you play to win. But I think to win, you've got to have a very specific mindset. You have to want to win and dominate. Otherwise, you're just taking part. You know, you're just participating. And I've always just had a mindset for winning. So that, you know, that's kind of how I got into Pure Clean. And in 2016, what happened? How I got into restoration was, by this point, I'd built a pretty successful company that, you know, we were on the radio. We had a pretty big reputation. A lot of business owners knew who I was. So I had a guy approach me who owned a water damage restoration company. And he said, you know, he called me and he said, "Hey, you've done a really good job running your company. People seem to love working for you. And I don't feel the same way about my business skills, but I love water damage." So he said, "So what would you think if you bought my company, which means my equipment, and then you hired me, and then I have a construction manager, I have a marketing guy, and we have 3 technicians. But we'd like to work under your leadership because we think we could do big things." And at the time, I was working with a consultant in the industry, in our industry. And I remember very vividly, they all said, "Ben, don't do it." They said, "You've got a very profitable carpet cleaning company. It's very well oiled. And if you try to step into the restoration world and take this on, you've got a great risk of potentially losing what you've got here. We've seen people do it in the past, and we just don't want to see that happen to you." So it gets into trusting your gut, like instinctively trusting your gut, because my gut told me that I can do it, because it goes back to my childhood of people telling me that I can't do something. And if they say that, I'm going to do it to the tenfold. So I decided to do it. I said, "Let's do it." We shook hands. I wrote him a check, purchased all of his equipment, his company, his employees, and I created a brand, and the brand was PureDry Restoration. Well, this is a learning experience, and you're going to have lots of these learning experiences, you know, owning businesses and things like this. But I was very ill educated and ill informed on the proper research and things like that you should do before buying a company. So it turned out he had a lot of Department of Revenue debt. So in Washington, we have the Department of Revenue here, and he had a tremendous amount of debt, and I didn't know that. And it was basically, what happened was, about 3 months into of this engagement, we had major disagreements on core values. Like, the way that I ran my company was in direct conflict with how he did. We didn't see eye to eye. And because of that, obviously the tension started growing more and more and more. And what wound up happening is I came to work 6:30 in the morning. I pulled up in the parking lot, hopped out, had my coffee. I walked into my warehouse in the back door, and I walked in, and all of our equipment was, you know, on the shelves going all the way down the warehouse. And I walked in, and about 98% of the equipment was missing. And so my first thought was excitement, because I'm figuring, you know, maybe we had a huge job come in last night. And so I got on the phone and I called one of the guys that worked for me. I said, "Hey, I can't get a hold of," I'll just call him Bob. That's not his name, but I can't get a hold of Bob, but all the equipment's missing. Did we have a huge job come in last night? And they're like, no, we didn't. And so I called my marketing guy, and we'll call him John. I called John. I said, hey, John, I can't get a hold of Bob, but all the equipment's missing. Did we have a huge job come in last night? And he's like, no, we didn't. Not that I know of. And so then I started to get this weird kind of pit in my stomach. And I went upstairs and I got on my camera system because it disappeared at some point in the night. And I see the door roll up in the shop. I see a U-Haul truck backing up, and I see Bob with another guy loading all the equipment into the U-Haul truck. So anyway, long story short, he wound up and taking off with all this equipment that I'd purchased, and I come to find out that he was going out to water damage jobs, and he was having them sign two contracts, one with his old company and one with mine. He was running the revenue through his old company and making me believe that we were waiting on checks. So it was a big
Oh my
scam.
gosh.
It was a big scam, and I got taken, and I hired an attorney. And of course, attorneys are the only ones that really win and make money on those situations. But so I had a decision to make. What I did own was his phone number, and I did have a little bit of equipment left that he couldn't fit in the truck. So because I still had the phone number, all his employees split. When they found out what happened, it was kind of an undercover operation. They all knew, and they all left with him and left me the one man standing with this new brand that I created, this new website, the pay-per-click leads, and then his phone number, which had leads coming into me, right? So I I didn't want it to be an "I told you so" moment from my consultants, like, "Oh, dude, I told you so. Look at this." So I went home and I talked to my wife, and I said, "What do we do?" I'm so busy running this carpet cleaning company, but I'm screwed because I've got all this Department of Revenue debt, and it's now my debt, right? And so I just do what you do. You do, I think, potentially what anybody would do in that moment is you just roll your sleeves up and you say, well, what needs to be true for me to fix this? And so I became the one man orchestra. Like, I was going out, signing the job, doing all the demo myself, moisture reading everything, writing the scopes, producing the invoice, submitting it to the carrier on a pretty large scale for one guy to be doing. And if you would have looked at me back then, you would have looked at a man that looks like he's in desperate need of sleep, like desperately sleep deprived, because I'd work all day and then work all night and then work into like the ill morning, like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., get home, shower, lay in bed for a minute, and then go straight to the office to run my meetings for the carpet cleaning company and then take off and keep going. And I did that for probably 6 months because I just couldn't come up for air, like to even interview somebody, or like I couldn't figure it out. But eventually, sorry, this is a long story. Eventually, what I wound up being able to do is my buddy Dave called me, who owned a PureClean franchise, and he had some employees. He's like, Ben, I hear you're in the water damage business. And he said, I'm getting out of the business, and I've got two guys that are really sharp, a project manager and then a technician, and they're really good guys. And I heard you're in the game. Would you be interested? So I said, yes, please, I'm interested. And I met with these guys and I hired these two individuals, and that took a lot of pressure off me. And then I could start working on the business because I'm like, shit, like I'm in this now. Like, I'm in restoration. I don't know much about restoration. I don't know much about insurance adjusters and all this BS Xactimate. I just don't know anything. But I studied my ass off. I became a student of the game. I've always done that, where I just study everything there is to know. And I'm like, we're in this. So I started, and that's when I started getting serious about, well, what are we really doing with this? Like, am I doing this for revenue? Am I doing this for profit? Am I doing, like, why are we even doing this? Because it kind of was dropped on my plate. I didn't plan it. in that context. And so that's when I started doing what I was talking about before, where I'm like, if we're gonna do this, if we're gonna be in this, we've got to do it right. So I started doing those, calling customers, calling plumbers, talking to agents, trying to figure out what do we need to build to be the grand solution to people's problems. And I mean, I was going to look for. I've written lots of manuals. I mean, I started documenting everything that I do and how I do it, and when I sell it, because I'm good at sales. Like, how do I sell a water damage job? What do I say? What do I say when they have a price objection? I started writing everything down, which is really hard, and that's the thing that business owners really resent is that type of work. But I did that, and I was able to build systems and procedures. And look, it was three of us, and we're just scraping the surface, and now we're the highest rated company in the entire marketplace. We're referred by all the biggest plumbing companies and HVAC companies. We're crushing it, but it wouldn't have happened if I wasn't willing to risk it all and lose it all. So
Wow, what a story of adversity and true grit. Curious, like what did keep you going? What stopped you from giving up when that fell on your shoulders? And I don't know, it's a horror story. You didn't even, like you said, plan to get into this business. So what do you think it was that kept you going? Especially until you hired your first two employees.
I love the. It's funny because when my business gets like where it's at now, where it's like everything kind of runs itself for the most part, and there's not a lot of controversy and like craziness and stuff, but I thrive going to war in that context. Like I do very well mentally when my back is against the wall, because I've got a lot to prove. I've got a lot to prove to people, and I think and I still feel that way. I think the toughest thing is when you set these goals, you set targets, and then what the most dangerous thing about being a business owner is when you achieve those goals that you thought were so far out of reach. And when you achieve those goals, and those goals maybe have monetary benefit to you personally. So let's say you wanted to live in this house and that was on your vision board, and you wanted to be able to buy these cars, and you wanted to be able to go on these vacations, and that was what drove you. Like you worked, you worked, you worked. I think the most challenging thing is when you get to that crossroads of like where that's all been accomplished, what's next? Like how do you create the next layer of growth plan, and why are you really doing it? If it's not about you, what is it about? And I think that's been a fun experience for me, is that it's not about me anymore. It's about taking these 49 people and figuring out where they're at in their life, and figuring out. And I do this when I hire people. We in the intake process, we find out what is their, like, what kind of car do you drive? What would you drive if you had the opportunity? Where do you live? What does your ideal home look like? How many bedrooms? What color is the house? Carpet, hardwoods? Who's around you? What does it look like when you're eating dinner? Tell me more about the vision, dude. I want to know about your vision. And then I take that, and then my motivation is now making that happen for them. So
Wow, what a story. What a way to inspire others. I'm so glad that you shared the grit and the adversity that you faced. I mean, wow. Okay, so now I'd like to learn more about the growth, which you did touch on, but you talked about the early days. How do things look today? What kind of growth have you experienced? Maybe we start with the numbers. What revenue did you end 2020 with, and what are your projections for 2021? And then we can dive more into what went into achieving the growth as of late.
So we did about 8 million in 2020, and then we'll do probably 10, 11 million this year. This year wasn't, so when we finished 2020, that was at the end of a rampage of growth. And as you're growing at a very rapid pace, there's a lot, obviously a lot of moving parts, because there's hiring and there's new positions that you're not even sure, like, I mean, this is just the truth, in my opinion, is as you're growing and you're scaling very quickly, you don't even know what these different positions should be, what they should be doing. It's happening so fast that you're trying to you're trying to continue growing, but you're trying to control and prevent the wheels from falling off, and so it's very challenging. So the point is that 2021 was not even a year that I wanted to grow. 2021 was a year where I'm like, we need to get our systems, our procedures, my management team all synchronized. Our meetings, our weekly performance meetings, our IG internal growth plans, our bonus programs, our manuals, our sales systems. Like, I'm like, this is the year that I put in the work to prepare for the next layer of growth. And that's the way that I've done it. And now, dude, like this year, if you came into our building at the beginning of the year, and then you came in right now, you'd walk in and be like, this is like I mean, I'll pat myself on the back. It's a very well-oiled machine, and I've got really good people, but I think it's because they know what their job is and they know how to measure success. Like they know what winning is, they know what winning is not, and I give them honest, sincere feedback, constructive criticism when they need it, and they know what the vision is and they know what the mission is. And that is so important before you just blow the hinges off and you get top line asphyxiated and you're like, I just want to get here and here and here. So the revenue is it's nice. We've definitely grown a lot, but it's nothing compared to what we're gearing up for. And it's exciting, which I know you'll talk about is hiring. I think it's very exciting for people to work for a company like this type of company where because they people get pumped. Like in our meetings, we just had a meet. We had a $1 million month last month, and so I walked around and gave everybody $1,000 in cash, and like people were crying and people were like losing their mind, and they're like, "This is you don't understand. This is life changing to me." And I just my kids were there. My kids were handing out money to people. My mom was there, and it was a pretty cool moment. But the point is, I think people are exhilarated and excited by working for that raw passion and that excitement and not the corporate like so
My goodness. Okay, tell me more. Is that your formula for growth? If you had to point out to our listeners what your bulleted list is, if nothing else, what is that formula?
yeah. So I thought about this for a minute, and it's a multitude of different things. I mean, first and foremost, you have to know how to run a profitable company. I see far too many companies that, like I said, get top line asphyxiation and they don't really understand. They don't, I mean, I've talked to a lot of business owners, say, what's your gross profit? And they don't understand what that means. And I say, well, what's your net profit? And they're like confused. They're like, I'm not, what do you mean? And I'm like, so the first thing that you really got to do before you start gearing up for growth is that you've got to have a financial literacy of how to read your P&L and understand what your P&L is telling you, because that really drives how you make decisions and where you're going to put emphasis into marketing and where you're going to pull back and when we should hire and when we need to trim fat. And like before anything, like you got to know, like for example, I know that my fuel expense should be between 2 and 3% of top line revenue always. So when I sit in my financial meetings, because I can't keep up with all the expenses and stuff, but I look for trigger points, and if it's supposed to be between 2 and 3%, it comes in at 6%. I know something's wrong. I know to go to my logistics department. I know what it's telling me, and I could go on and on. Every single expense line item in my company has a benchmark. And so I've put people in charge of managing those benchmarks. If they get outside of those benchmarks, then I get involved. And then from the CEO perspective, I'm delivering the coaching and guidance and clarity to fix those issues. But so that's number one is financial literacy and understand your numbers. Don't get tied to the top line, get tied to the bottom line. And so when you're setting goals, set net goals. Like I want to net this much and then reverse engineer it up to the top. I put branding, like branding is so crucial. And I drive around and I see I mean, even when you look, I hope I don't offend anybody, but I look at some of these even big brands, and they're just these archaic dinosaur brands that lack flavor and lack excitement and lack that $1 million brand. And for me personally, branding has been like when you look at our brand, if you look at our employees, the way they dress and the trucks and just everything, the gift boxes, the folders, well, you can't see it, the mouse pad. You can see the truck wrap on our back, but they stand out. So be a purple cow in the field. Do not blend into your surroundings, because that's part of our growth, is that we stand out. Like, we just look different. And you should want that. I think systemizing your sales experience. I think water damage. I mean, if we're talking to water damage company owners right now, I think that we get so, what's the right word? We get spoiled, thinking that customer experience, it matters a little bit, but I mean, we're water damage people. We're in, we're out. We send the bill to the carrier, fight it out for a month, and then we get paid, and we're on to the next one. And but you got to really ask yourself, like, if you were to compare your service experience to the top five players in the game, how would you stack up? Like, when you read the reviews on my company, it's like these raving fan reviews of how exhilarated they were by the way my people talk, and the way their etiquette, and the way they care for the home, the way their truck looks. And they mention all those things. So systemization of the sales experience and customer experience, scripting, everything's scripted. Everything is scripted. When my guy goes into a home, they're like, I want to say robots, but they're not. But they're robotic in the sense of subconsciously they've been trained to talk and walk the same way. So the brand experience is always the same. So I think fanatical obsession with making raving fans, like, you truly have to be obsessive about it. And if you're not, you're going to be mediocre at best. And why even do business if you're going to be mediocre? A highly competitive mindset and work ethic, like, hey, it's no secret. Like, I work more and harder, and that's what I do. And I enjoy it because it's a sport and I'm passionate about it. But if you want to take over and you want to build a big company, you have to outpace them. I think Elon Musk says it best. He says, when I work, 7 days a week, and I work 12 hours a day, and the other guy's working 40 hours a week, I can get twice as much done in a year that this guy can. And that's the same formula that I have. I can outpace people because I can't do it forever, but I'm young enough to do that. And anyway, so, and then I think lastly, leadership is something that very few people understand. And I think that you can just tell, like, even my management team, there's a systematic approach to increasing your emotional intelligence enough to be a good leader and be somebody that people want to work for. But I seldomly find the business owners really understand leadership. Or, for example, have they been to the Dale Carnegie training program? Have they read How to Win Friends and Influence People? Do they understand how to criticize somebody constructively? Do they understand that giving somebody positive, noticing what they're doing right instead of noticing what they're doing wrong? Like, all these things, it would be the last bullet point.
Wow, that is a great list. I'm very excited for our audience to hear that and hopefully have their pen out or their tablet out or their keyboard out. I'm sure there's going to be some great takeaways. So, on to staffing. I'm so excited to ask you about that because we've heard it throughout, from your point of view on leadership, from the top-notch customer experience you're delivering. Obviously, it takes top-notch talent. But to layer onto that, I mean, we know that it's the top challenge restoration companies face right now, finding and keeping employees. And I read that you're hiring 2 to 3 people a week at a time when, of course, most are struggling to find anyone. So, can you talk more about what your experience with attracting talent is like and the company culture component of that?
Yeah, it's showtime. So, meaning, when I say showtime, I think when an employee comes in here, it's showtime. Like, we got to show these people, like, why they would want to work for us. I think most, just based on old mindset, is that the employee should be kind of begging to come work for the company, or more or less, what can you do for the company, not what can the company do for you. And I don't agree with it all of the time. I think that it creates an attitude of what's the word? I'll skip that. My point is that we have a hiring process. We have an interviewing process. We have a video that we show. We do hiring events. We make it seem highly competitive. Like you're not. We make them want it really bad. Kind of like my wife. Like how we've been together since we were 13 years old, and but for a long period of time before it became serious, there was like this chase, like she's not ready to commit and she wants to be friends, but it increases the desire. And I think we create the same environment for the people to interview here, where we show them what life could look like if they came here. But then we act like we don't need them at the same time, and we hope that they make it through the next round. And what happens is they start just having a more higher desire to work here. And then we just have people walk in, like our new receptionist, Caroline, just flat out walked into the building. I was having a meeting with a coordinator of mine, and she walked right up to me and she says, "Is your name Ben?" And I said, "Yes, it is." She's like, "Mr. Surdi, I've come to work for you and I want to work for you. I don't care what it is." And so I found a spot for her. I didn't really have a spot for her, but I'm like, I like that a lot. I like the tenacity. Let's find a position for her. And she's crushing it. She won the customer service award last month at our company. And so she's crushing it. But look, let me get into this. It's easy to say, but I think what are like real measurable things that people can do? Number one, we have an internal referral rewards program. So if you're an employee and we have hiring needs at the company, we may have a $500 hiring bonus that goes to the employee. We may have a $1,000 hiring bonus that goes to the internal employee. We may have a $2,000. It depends on what the need is. And what we basically say is, hey, good news, guys, we're growing. And they know what growing means, though. They know, okay, that means we're growing. That means I'm going to be able to move up. And so we basically set a bounty, and we say, we've got a bounty. We need 4 guys hired in the next week. We're doing a $1,000 hiring bonus to you. You get $500 up front and $500 on their 90th successful day after we've onboarded them through our training programs. And so they get pumped up. And so that's number one recommendation is create an internal recruiting system. Number two, we're very active in the community, very active with Chamber. We're very active with other businesses in the community. So we kind of like ring a bell, like we need people. Does anybody know anybody? That helps. Having a good reputation in your town helps. And then you've just got social media and staying in front of people. And then, of course, we use the Indeed, and we use ZipRecruiter and just all the traditional means of recruiting. But you're always recruiting. We're always recruiting. We're always looking for people. It never stops. And so that's what you have to do.
Cool. And quickly, you mentioned the customer experience or the customer service award. So, are you alluding to an award program you have within your company to recognize employees?
Yeah, yeah. So every month we have a big party, like a big celebration. It's something I've done since the very beginning. Even when we only had 3 employees and we were working out of my garage at my house, I would have, the company meeting. And so what it looks like, just to give people an idea, because this ties into culture and how to build a culture that's kind of measurably energetic. We built a Google presentation, PowerPoint slide. I've got a big projector in a very large room, lots of seating. I buy breakfast for the entire company. They show up at 7 a.m. I usually kick off the meeting, and the first slide we go through is our mission at our company. And so I'll look out to the crowd and I'll say, "Good morning." I get energetic. "Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing?" And then I say, "What is our mission at Surdi Enterprises?" And everybody reads that. And then I say, boom, and then I skip to our vision. And I believe in having a painted vision. I talk a lot about that. Basically, when you set goals, your brain doesn't recognize the difference between old memories and new memories, but your subconscious mind makes decisions based off memories. It's how you react subconsciously to your environment. And so I said, by emotionally tying yourself to a vision of the future, if your brain doesn't know the difference between a past or future experience, it tends to lend itself to creating the behavior that you would need to make that happen. So we talk about our painted vision every month, and our painted vision is very clear. And we all read it as a group, and then we read our core values. And I go through kind of like in a TED Talk environment. I walk through the crowd and we talk about our core values. Um, and then each department manager comes up and they present on their department. So Pure Clean, my operations manager, comes up and we talk what was our revenue goal, what did we hit, big celebrations. Same thing, Pure Dry Op manager comes up, my administrative manager comes up, my customer service manager comes up, my construction manager comes up. They all report in on their stuff, and then we get to the award ceremony. And the award ceremony is top sales with Pure Clean, highest closing percentage with Pure Clean customer service, most jobs signed in Pure Dry. There's a whole bunch of different things that we do, and it's fun and it keeps them excited. And I spend a lot more money on this kind of stuff that probably most companies do, but that is the one thing that makes people highly committed and loyal, I think.
Wow, that's so exciting. So, to be clear here, I'm just curious, would you say that hiring and retaining talent is a top struggle for you or not so much? I mean, if I look at the numbers that you're finding people so often, I'd say no. Are you experiencing that same widespread story or no?
No, we are. I mean, I'm not gonna
Okay.
I'm not gonna act like that's not a challenge. It is a challenge, but again, you have to look at the challenge and say, well, what needs to be true? What needs to be true for me to solve this equation? And I start writing down ideas, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to visit where do my ideal employees hang out? You know, where do they spend time? I'm going to go intentionally sit there, and so maybe it's like, the bar down the street, because a lot of the working blue collar group of gentlemen that go down there and have a couple beers after work. I may intentionally go sit down there and strike conversation with a couple guys. What do you do, man? Tell me about what it is. Why do you like it? What if I could take your whole life to the next level? What if I could help you do this? What if I could help you? Why don't you come down to my shop? Let me walk you through my building. Let me kind of let you inside the vault, and and you tell me whether you think it'd be a good move for you or not. What do you think? And they're like, yeah, dude. I'm like, cool. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Then here's the address. Boom. Like, again, what needs to be true for me to solve this? Not the lazy, lackadaisical bullshit like, oh, I'm going to just rely on applications that I'm getting and they didn't show up to the interview. Like, that's passive behavior, and that's how you stunt your growth. So it's an issue, but it's not, right? It's a challenge, but it's overcome. It's able to be overcome. So
Very good. Thank you so much for sharing all of those inside scoops on your ingredients to building a loyal team and keeping them coming in. Literally have people walking into your business saying, "I want to work here." That's a big deal. Now that we've talked about a lot of the internal aspects, I'd love to hear more about your focus on the customer experience, which has come up before. Uh, Anything we didn't discuss yet about that approach you take to customer experience and really making it an exceptional one beyond the normal?
I mean, it starts off with the initial intake of the phone call, of course. So I always tell my front line is the my customer service team. So they're intaking these phone calls. So we talk a lot about your tone of voice, your compassion, your empathy, identifying their problems, and then intentionally telling them what the solutions are going to be, making them feel comfortable enough to make a decision and commit to us, and letting them know that, Mrs. Jones, I just want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to serve you. And just so you know, our whole focus is to give you a 5-star experience. And so if at any point through this process of working with us, you don't feel like you're having a 5-star experience, you've got my number. I want you to call us right away. Does that sound fair? And they're like, cool. That just builds a lot of confidence in the experience. And they're like, it starts to lower the fence a little bit. So then when my technician arrives in the home, they're already a lot more open and a lot more inviting to the technician that comes in. And then same thing, hey, my name's Ben. I'm a water damage expert with PureDry Restoration. We're going to be doing a high-tech property inspection for you today. I'd like to take a few moments just to tell you what the high-tech inspection is. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the company, and then we'll get started with the walkthrough, and I'll answer any questions you have. Before we get started, do you have any questions? No, like they're already wowed, right? They're already like kind of. Plus, I look like $1 million. I'm uniformed. I'm wearing booties on my feet. My brand new truck, this truck is in the driveway. They're like, okay, this is the real deal. And then it continues on from there, right? Like I can keep going, but everything's scripted. And when we're done, they get a custom gift box in the mail, a PureDry gift box. They open it up. There's a bag of cookies in there. There's a card from me, the owner, saying, "Hey, I'm the CEO. I want to thank you so much for allowing us to serve you on the highest level. By the way, do you know 5 other people that may need our services in the future? If you do, we have a referral rewards." Like it's all built like that, and it's not like it happened overnight, but it takes thinking outside the box. But I think that our competitive advantage is I don't think other people can match what we're doing. I don't think they can figure it out. I know I'm sharing some of the secrets, but I don't know that a lot of companies are willing to go to the extent we have, which is my competitive advantage. And I think why we're going to become the biggest restoration company in the Northwest.
Very exciting. Yes, thank you for sharing those tidbits. It's exciting to hear to your point. It's like, wow, this is legit. Look at the truck in the driveway. Good point. Like just branding, that's so true when you hire a contractor for any from any vertical, that in and of itself. But the cookies and the consistent experience, and the I don't know, the communication, very, very cool components. Thanks for being so open there. So, as if this interview hasn't been full of takeaways, let's talk more in the official takeaway section of the interview. First, most memorable project and why?
Oh boy, there's so many. Well, there's a couple. I mean, we had marijuana, it was legalized very early on in Washington State, and we had a very large wholesale manufacturer of marijuana products, and there was a sewage backup that affected his entire operation. But it was such a challenging. It's one of those projects where you're like, I probably shouldn't get involved with this because this guy was a very intense individual, and there's cameras everywhere, and there's weed everywhere, and there's edibles, and there's stuff everywhere, and like it wasn't quite legal yet. Like it was kind of a weird thing, and I think that was a very challenging project. I think we did we did a large commercial project where it's Section 8 housing, and my guys were there doing the water damage job. And one of my guys calls me, and they're like, "Dude, I just had a gun pulled on me. This guy's freaking." They filmed it. The guy pulled a gun out on him. He's spitting, and he's all high on some kind of drug. And there's been, I mean, God, we do, 100 plus jobs every month, and so there's always there's always something interesting, right?
All right, so in that work that you and your employees do, what in your opinion are the tools that stand out most is like can't live without them, whether it's business side, field side, both? Most important tools.
I mean, if I'm getting very technical, obviously, infrared cameras and a good moisture reading kit. We iPads, they all have iPads. I think that the software that you choose to use can be very important. Um, what else is important? I think DocuSketch, Matterport. We've adopted DocuSketch and Matterport into our company, so we're documenting the full extent of the job on a pre basis and a during basis and an after basis. I think it helps us to be more accurate with our invoicing and have better protection against potential, disputes where customers may think that you scratched their wall, but you can say, "Oh, the wall was scratched before we got here." It just helps protect you. So I think maybe that.
Thanks. Okay, biggest challenge right now.
Um, Biggest challenge. Okay, so the biggest challenge right now is we have way too much volume of work coming in, and we just had a meeting about it. we have a lot of referral partners, and we have a commitment to them. We have a commitment that we've made that, hey, when you refer us, we put you on the A list. That means we give you direct resources and quick response rates. But we're too busy, and which goes back to a staffing thing where we're like, we need to hire, but the volume of work coming in is outpacing the volume of employment that we can produce. And that is the biggest challenge in our company right now.
Very good. And to clarify, back to the referral program, that like an example would be your plumbing colleagues and that like is that kind of what you're getting at?
Property management, yeah, different contract. We work with a lot of large contractors that use us for mold, and they need you out. They need you out there, you know. And so it's always the battle of resources, really, and it's a balance between growing and not like blowing the wheels off the car, and it's always a challenge. I think that's always a challenge. So.
Very good. Okay, it seems like you have learned a lot over the course of your career. What's the biggest lesson if you had to pinpoint them? What's the biggest lesson you've learned so far?
Um, I think I've matured as a business owner over the years. I mean, it's hard not to get emotionally like charged when you're in this when you're highly competitive and you're very passionate. It's hard not to get very emotionally make emotional decisions, you know. For example, we go out, we do a really good job. We make a raving fan with a customer, best experience they've ever had. The insurance agents raving about us. It goes to the adjuster, and what's the adjuster want to do? They want to take your invoice, chop it down, spit it out, burn it up in flames, and that's just the reality of what their agenda is. And I used to get very emotionally charged. Like, I used to get very emotionally charged about it because I'm like, no, look, this is an invoice. We've done the work. This is all by the book. It's S500 guidelines. And now I've learned to not make emotionally driven decisions. I let the rush of emotions wear off. I get into a more logical state of mind because I oftentimes will make a wrong choice or a wrong email or one of these things when I'm in an emotional state of mind. So I mean that's partially to do with it is just developing as a maturing as a business owner and being a good leader. Um, what else? What have I learned? I don't know. I think that I've learned that I'm capable of a lot more. Um, that I would have originally thought, but I'm always chasing myself, trying to be this next version of myself. And I've just learned that there is no limit, and there isn't any limit. And I think once I got out of my own way and started believing in myself a lot more and saying, I am the dude, man. Like I'm the dude. We can do this and not doubt myself. I think that that's where you can really start getting some traction and having fun with it. So
Thank you. All right. So, speaking of learning and lessons, where do you turn to for inspiration and education?
um, yeah, I mean, I read a lot. So I've got a cabin. I've got a cabin in Lake Wenatchee. It's about 2 hour drive from my house. And I try and go there as much as I can because it's very tranquil. It's very peaceful. You're in the middle of the woods. You're by water, and I can really be in a good frame of mind. And when I'm there, number one is think. I mean, I think. I mean, intentionally developing thought that has benefit to it, not just filling your head with, oh, well, I got to do that, I have a task, but really getting into a deep thought state of mind. And in doing that, I think and grow. I mean, I obviously a big fan of Napoleon Hill and Dale Carnegie and Simon Sinek, and I read a lot. And so, but there's a difference between reading and studying. And I would mention this. I think that you can read a book to get from cover to cover, just for the sake of saying, oh yeah, I've read that book. But what I do is I read a chapter and I've got my notebook next to me and I finish that chapter and I spend 15, 20 minutes thinking on that subject and writing what like what did I relate to? What things can I take from this chapter? What am I going to do differently just based on this one thing? And you just let it sink in. And that's really the way the book's designed to be read. Actually, Think and Grow Rich is not read it from cover to cover. You reread each chapter and you reread. So I would say definitely, if you haven't read the book Think and Grow Rich, it's not just about rich in the context of financial riches. It's rich in relationships, rich in mindset, rich in a financial capacity, rich in goal setting, and all these things. I definitely watch podcasts of other successful business owners. I look at other industry mavericks and other industry like HVAC and plumbing. I'm like, well, why are they growing so fast? What are they doing? What's unique about their company? Um, and so I try to pay attention to that. And then I don't watch any news. I certainly do not fill my brain with the BS that is being pumped into for us, King 5 News, Como 4 News. I don't watch any of that. I don't have the bandwidth to allow that kind of information into my brain, so I'm very intentional to ignore that. Um, and I was in the entrepreneur organization of Seattle for several years. I think when COVID hit, as COVID made many things intolerable or uncomfortable, I actually left the Seattle Entrepreneur Organization for a period just because it was kind of going through a different thing. But anyways, the point is that I try to surround myself with people that I want to be like or get to their level. I'm looking at guys that run $500 million companies, and I'm picking their brain and I'm emailing them and I'm asking them questions, and that's it.
Great stuff. Thanks for sharing that. Second to last question, advice to those who are just kicking off their restoration business.
Yeah, I kind of said this before, but I think focus on your bottom line, like not your top line revenue, because you'll just have an oversized, I'll say this again. I know I've already said it, but I know companies that are doing, 30 million a year that are making less money than guys that are doing 2.5 million a year, running
Ah,
very, very profitable companies. So if you're just kicking off your business, I would get with well, let me say this. I've always been very quick to get paid help, paid consultants, paid coaches, and many different aspects. Leadership coaches, health and wellness coaches, mindset coaches, financial coaches, wealth management coaches, CPA. Be very quick to invest in yourself and be very quick to invest in increasing your financial IQ. Invest in yourself before you start trying to buy employees and get employees in and get fixated on top line so you can brag at the bar with your buddies. Learn from the people that have done it before you and pick up the phone and pay them. Pay whatever it is to pick their brain. Fly them out to your company. Don't try to recreate the wheel. The wheel's already been created 20 different times. Just invest in putting smart people around you, and it'll cut your learning curve in half, honestly.
love that. Cut your learning curve in half and surrounding yourself with experts. And okay, so my last question, this has been amazing. What is ahead for you? What are your objectives for the future of the business? I know you've hinted at some, but I know you have a plan. So, what is the vision as of today?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think that I've got financial targets for 2022, but the big vision here is that we're going to go on I can't say too much about it. I'll just say that I've got a very big plan in place. I can just say that my vision was to become the most respected and recognized water damage restoration company in the Northwest. And I've got a plan in place where we're going to be increasing the size of our company very substantially and basically taking what we've done and going in other marketplaces, looking for other companies that maybe want to join up with our company instead of competing against our company. I want to take over. I want to really bring the level of service that we've created here to every customer in our area. Um, so we're going to add contents in 2022. I just bought some property and we've got plans for building out the facility for that. So I just closed on that property last week. We bought this building. We got a 25,000 square foot building. In 2019, I bought this. We redid the whole thing. We've outgrown it. We're already kind of like at our capacity. So I've got to start looking for a new, larger facility, which is not what I was planning on. But, believe it or not, contrary to what most advisors would do or have you do, is I don't really have a sophisticated business plan. I have ideas and I have a vision, and then I do what feels natural in the moment, and it's worked for me up until this point. I mean, I'll have revenue targets and things like this, but it's not like hyper detailed where, I kind of am fluid and I'm water and I kind of go with the flow with the destination. I've got the destination where I want to be, and there's going to be waves that hit and the water's going to pull us in and out, but that's kind of the idea. But yeah, we're excited. We're pumped. We're blessed. I think we're hopefully going to get out of this COVID mess and, get into a more normal way of living here. I don't know where you live, but I live in Washington State, which is one of the most aggressive states in the country for what we're going through. And it's been very challenging mentally, just, dealing with the politics side of it. But all things are good. All things are looking up for us. We'll have our biggest year ever this coming year, and that's always exciting. So
Wow. Well, congratulations on all of your success. And really, thank you for sharing so much inspiration from a story standpoint, you as a human being and the growth you've experienced, but then taking that to this business that just keeps blossoming. And then all the practical takeaways that I really think our audience will be able to put to work. I really appreciate your openness, Benjamin. It's been an awesome interview. Thank you.
yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Um, and hopefully we can help some other people out. So appreciate it.
Yes, yes, yes. That is the goal. So before we go, where can listeners go to connect with you or to learn more about Pure Dry Restoration and Pure Clean carpet cleaning?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, I'm on there. If you just type in Ben Surdi, you'll find me on LinkedIn. Facebook, I'm relatively active on Facebook from a business perspective, so you can always reach me out on there. PureDry is on Facebook. We've got a killer Facebook page, and you get to kind of look inside the box, and you'll really get a feel for our culture when you look at our Facebook page. Same thing for Pure Clean, and puredry.com is our website, and then purecleanseattle.com is our website for Pure Clean.
Awesome. Thanks again, Benjamin.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. Okay, listeners and viewers, for more insights on restoration, remediation, and the people behind it all, please visit our website, randrmagonline.com, also Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. And if you haven't yet, please be sure to follow the podcast to keep up with all of our latest episodes and give us a quick review and rating if you could. We're also on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, so we invite you to follow us there too. And if you're interested in sharing your real story in restoration, that's no matter where you sit in the industry or the world or your level, please reach out to me at kingv@bmpmedia.com. This has been another R&R Real Stories in Restoration episode. Thank you for listening.